Before I begin, where are you watching this video from? The US, Canada, Australia, or all the way across the globe? Let me know down below. I really want to see how far my story has traveled. And if you've ever trusted someone, only to be hit with an unexpected slap in return, then maybe you'll understand the story I'm about to tell. My name is Margaret Lewis. I'm 62 years old, with skin a little weathered and hair graying with the years, but my heart is still very much like the Margaret from 30 years ago, a woman who truly believed that if you do the right thing will come to you. I started working at Franklin & Company in 1994, a mid-sized pharmaceutical distribution company in Columbus, Ohio. On my first day walking into that office, I was just a typist. A few years later, I learned inventory management, order entry, and eventually moved into the customer service department. I was never the best, but I was always the one who never gave up. I worked under 3 different bosses. The first retired. The second was poached by a bigger company. And the third, the current head of operations, is Russell Grant, a man with a gentle voice but calculating eyes. I didn't hate Russell. But I didn't trust him either. Last February, I heard that Debbie, the manager of the customer service department, where I was working, was going to retire. That position would be vacant. And though no one said it aloud, everyone assumed I would be the one to fill it. I had the most seniority. I'd filled in for Debbie during her extended vacation. I knew the customers, the processes, and all the tricks of the outdated system that no one else even remembered how to use. For weeks, coworkers passing my desk would smile and say things like, "Getting ready to be the boss, huh, Margaret? If not you, then who else?" I'm not someone who gets my hopes up easily, but this time, I started to believe. Russell called me into a private meeting. His voice was soft, as always, but there was something different. "Margaret, this Friday, are you free around 3 p.m.? I nodded, and my heart fluttered. Russell looked at me, no smile, no hint, but he added, "I think you'll want to be there." To me, that felt like confirmation. I went home and told my daughter over the phone. "I think I'm actually getting promoted." She paused, then screamed through the phone, "You deserve it more than anyone." I didn't have many close friends at work, but I had people who'd watched me grow up in that company. They'd seen me come into work just days after my husband passed. They'd seen me carrying boxes of files in the rain to save data when the office flooded. They'd seen me stay late until 8 p.m. fixing an order error caused by a system glitch. And they'd seen me smile through it all. On Thursday, I ordered a cake. A small one, with the words, "Thank you, for trusting experience." I didn't dare put my name on it, I didn't want to seem presumptuous. But everyone knew. I also ordered coffee, and a few boxes of cookies, the kind people in the department usually reached for when stressed. I picked almond chocolate for Sarah, cinnamon for Joe. I didn't want that afternoon to feel like a party, just a moment worth remembering. The night before, I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned, thinking about the first day I walked into Franklin & Company, wearing the sky blue dress my mother had sewn from an old one. I thought about the winter mornings I'd come in early to salt the steps so coworkers wouldn't slip. I thought about the nights I called clients to apologize for system errors, not my fault, but I always felt responsible. And I thought, if not this time, then when? Friday morning. I arrived earlier than usual. I adjusted the boxes of cookies, set out the paper cups, played some soft music through my little Bluetooth speaker. No one really knew what was going to happen at 3 p.m., but I could feel the quiet trust in everyone's eyes. Around 2:50, Russell walked by. He looked into the room, gave me a small nod, and said, "Ready, Margaret?" I smiled, my hands slightly trembling. Not from nerves. But because I had waited nearly 30 years for this day. Not just for a title. But for recognition. For respect. I stood up and walked toward the group gathering outside. And then, I stepped into the small conference room, the same room where I'd sat through hundreds of meetings over the years. But today, something felt different. The air carried a sense of excitement, but also something unfamiliar. Sarah looked at me and winked. Finally, it's your day, Margaret. Joe gave me a light pat on the back as I walked by. Told you. No one deserves it more. I didn't know what to say. I just smiled, nodded gently, and stood beside the table where I had laid out the cake and coffee. At exactly 3 o'clock, Russell walked in. Everyone fell silent. Russell held a folder in one hand and a white envelope in the other. He gave his usual faint smile, then began. First, I want to thank you all for being here. Today is a very special day. We're about to welcome a new leader for the customer service department. I looked around. My eyes began meeting the expectant gazes of my coworkers. I stood a little straighter, bracing myself. Russell continued. When Debbie announced her retirement, we gave this a lot of thought. This role demands speed, vision, and adaptability to change. So I'm pleased to announce that the person stepping into this role will be Brian Carter. My heart skipped. Brian? Brian? The new guy who'd been here less than 6 months. Fresh out of college. Still learning how to use the internal management software, the same software I had trained dozens of people to use. The room fell into a dead silence. I wasn't sure if anyone else was as shocked as I was, but I stood frozen. Russell gestured. Brian, come on up. Brian, neatly combed hair, light blue tie, a smile that was still a bit shaky, stepped forward. I could tell even he hadn't seen this coming. I'm very grateful for this opportunity, Brian said, his voice slightly cracking. I'll do my best not to let anyone down. Russell patted him on the shoulder, then turned back to the group. I hope everyone will support Brian as much as possible. Especially you, Margaret. I know your experience is invaluable, and I'm confident Brian will learn a lot from you. I swallowed hard. I smiled. A mechanical, automatic smile, as if my face had forgotten how to do anything else. I clapped. The room followed. Some people glanced at me, maybe to see how I'd react, maybe because they didn't know what else to do. I backed away toward the table and poured myself a cup of coffee. My hand trembled, thankfully, the paper cup was sturdy. The cake was still sitting there. The words, thank you, for trusting experience, now felt like they were mocking me. I didn't eat a single bite. No one touched the cake for the rest of the afternoon. Later, Sarah came up and whispered. I don't understand. I smiled. It's okay. I don't either. The rest of that afternoon is a blur. I don't remember what I did. I only remember the cold, like someone had poured ice water over my trust. I felt like a foolish old woman who had believed that working hard would be enough. At 5 p.m., I sat in my car, holding the keys but not turning them. I stared out the window, at the building I had devoted 29 years of my life to. And for the first time ever, I asked myself, was I too kind? I didn't quit. They were hoping I would. Russell thought I'd give up. Brian probably hoped I'd just disappear so he could breathe easier. But I still showed up on time every morning. I still made coffee for the department like I always did. I still responded to customer emails faster than anyone else. Only one thing had changed. I stopped believing. And when a 62-year-old woman stops believing, yet stays, you should worry. I started observing. Not out of idle curiosity. But the way a carpenter studies a piece of wood to see where the rod has begun, before striking the first blow. Brian wasn't a bad person. But he was green. And more importantly, overconfident, because he thought he was protected. Within his first week, Brian had sent the wrong sales report to accounting. Attended a client meeting without double-checking the data. Delegated contract signing authority to an intern, a clear violation of policy. I documented all of it, not by word, but with evidence, timestamps, content, and records. I didn't snitch. I didn't complain. I did something simpler, and far more frightening. I let the mistakes speak for themselves. No covering. No saving. No, let me help you this one time. Brian once asked me to double-check a quote before sending it to a client, the way I used to do for Debbie. I smiled. Oh, you're the manager now. I trust you've got this. 2 weeks later, a contract worth nearly $300,000 was cancelled because Brian sent an incorrect quote with the wrong terms. The client, one of our oldest partners, was furious and escalated the matter to headquarters. I said nothing. But I sat beside Russell in the emergency meeting. And when he asked, "Does anyone know what happened here?" I looked at him. My eyes were calm, no accusation, no bitterness, just the gaze of someone who had seen this coming from miles away. I presented the standard protocol, using official documentation I had helped write. I provided internal communications, with Brian's signed approval. I emphasized. We used to have a 3-step checklist before sending major quotes. I'm not sure why it hasn't been followed lately. No one spoke. Russell sat in silence for several seconds. Brian stared down at the table. Sweat had soaked through the collar of his dress shirt. A week later, I was invited to a private meeting, this time, not with Russell, but with HR. They didn't say it outright, but I understood. The executive board wanted to know what was happening in our department. I explained, without spite, without naming names, just laid out the facts, with the words of someone still dedicated, no longer hopeful, but still responsible. At the end, I said quietly, I once hoped to lead this place, but maybe I still can, just in a different way. 2 days later, Brian's contract signing authority was revoked. An internal meeting was held. Russell was no longer leading it, it was now the regional director, who only showed up when things got serious. I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel triumphant. I just sat quietly, watching it all unfold like a movie I'd already seen the ending of. And then, an email landed in my inbox. Margaret, I'm sorry. I wasn't careful enough, and maybe I wasn't mature enough for that role. Thank you for still being kind, even when I didn't deserve it. Brian. I read it 3 times. Then I saved it. I didn't reply. That night, I went home and made myself a pot of tea. Outside, snow was falling gently, cold, but peaceful. And I thought, justice doesn't need to be loud. Sometimes, it just needs patience, and silence. I still sit at the same old desk, by the second-floor window, where the afternoon sun filters through the blinds around 3:30 p.m. My water bottle is still the same old glass one, decorated with faded pink floral patterns. I still bring lunch from home, usually a chicken sandwich and a bit of salad. And I'm still Margaret, the woman who doesn't stand out, doesn't make noise, doesn't need the spotlight. But what's no longer the same, is the way people look at me. Sarah, the one who once whispered, I don't understand. She understands now. She comes to me for advice on handling difficult clients. She listens more carefully, takes detailed notes, and is genuinely grateful. Joe, who never really cared who rose or fell, once poured me a cup of coffee and said, You know, the way you handled that day, that was gutsy. If it were me, I'd have slammed the desk and walked out ages ago. I smiled softly. Because you haven't lived long enough to know, silence can be louder than an explosion. A few days later, Russell invited me to a meeting. I knocked and walked in, he was standing by the table, not seated. Gone was the usual calm demeanor. His voice had the tone of someone who'd just swallowed a bitter pill. Margaret. I owe you an apology. I said nothing. I was wrong to overlook you. I thought the department needed fresh air, a youthful shift, but I failed to see what everyone else already saw in you. Still, I didn't speak. Russell continued. The executive board asked me to propose someone to restructure the department. I want to know, would you accept the role? I looked at him for a long moment. There were so many things I wanted to say, but I didn't. Instead, I simply asked. This time, it's not because I'm older? Not because I know the system? But because I'm the right person? Russell nodded. No dodging. No euphemisms. For the first time, I saw a man learning what humility truly looked like. I didn't answer right away. I stepped outside, walking down the hallway, the one I'd rushed through countless times over the years. I passed Debbie's old desk, still empty. I passed the break room, the one where that cake, from that day, still haunted the memory. I remembered what it felt like to be dismissed, to be overlooked. And then, I turned back. I opened Russell's door. I accept. But on my terms. A new team. Full authority to choose my people. And this time, I want someone properly trained to take over after me, not someone promoted just because they're young. Russell nodded without hesitation. You have everything you need. A few weeks later, an internal email was sent out. We're pleased to announce that Margaret Lewis will assume the role of Customer Service Department Manager, tasked with restructuring the team and leading our long-term talent development strategy. No one was surprised. No one clapped wildly like they do in Zoom meetings celebrating promotions. But in everyone's eyes, there was real respect. I moved into the new office. Not bigger. Not fancier. Just different, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the company's back lot, where the old maple tree still sheds its leaves every fall. I pinned a note on the corkboard above my desk. It read, "Quiet. But never defeated." That night, I went home and opened the old wooden drawer where I keep little mementos. I took out the paper cake wrapper from that day, the only thing I kept from that celebration that never was. I cut off a small piece, brewed a cup of tea, and sat by the window. Not to eat. Just to remind myself. Justice delayed doesn't mean justice denied. I share this story, not to complain. Not to cry out that life is unfair. Because the truth is, life is unfair, by nature. But if there's one thing I've learned in nearly 30 years of working, it's this. Fairness is not something you're handed. It's something you patiently reclaim, with your own dignity. I once smiled at a celebration I thought was for me, only to find it was for someone else. I once quietly walked out of a meeting room, carrying a cake no one touched. And I once thought that maybe I was too naive to believe good people would be rewarded. But then I realized, good people don't need rewards to keep being kind. They just need a chance for that kindness to be seen and remembered. If you're listening to my story, and you've ever been overlooked, underestimated, dismissed, I just want to say this. Don't let bitterness make you cold. Don't let someone else's poor decision make you forget your true worth. Be patient. Observe. And when your moment comes, rise. Not loudly. Just firmly. Studio microphone, pause for a few seconds, voice softens. If this story resonated with you, please hit like, so I know there are still people out there who believe in true value. And if you'd like to hear more stories like this, real stories, imperfect but full of life, hit subscribe. That way, I'll have a reason to keep sharing. Who knows? Next time, I might tell you about the time I got fired, and felt grateful for it. Speech balloon, and don't forget to leave a comment. Have you ever faced unfairness at work? Did you stay silent, speak up, or walk away? I read them all. I always read them all. Thank you for listening. My name is Margaret, and I still believe. Slowly, but surely, justice does come.